For centuries, gold has been India's go to safe haven for investment. It's that reliable friend, always appreciating in value, trusty hedge against inflation, and a safety net for rainy days. This timeless wisdom has been passed down like a cherished family heirloom. But as more and more women join the high net worth category and take the reins of their wealth, they're diversifying their investment game beyond traditional picks like gold, real estate, and good old stashing the cash. This is according to a study by Waterfield Advisors. In a survey of 104 high net worth Indian women with a net worth of over 10 crore, the wealth advisory firm found that 95% of respondents showed interest in investing across asset classes. And guess what? Among them, 62% women are interested in listed equity, 54% in gold, and 41% in real estate. Globally, the share of female billionaires and ultra-high net worth individuals has also increased in 2023 compared to 2010.
As you grow and you sort of maybe save more money and your earning capacity grows, etc. I think for me, my risk appetite greatly increased, and just my ability to build a more diversified portfolio came up.
How do you do this job of investing really well? How do you price risk? How do you price return? I think for most people, when you invest, if you price risk and return effectively, you will get the best kind of returns.
So even the proportion, if you look at the percentage of a woman's AUM across the board, 50% invested into equities and lesser now into debt or other instruments.
That's Suhasini Sampath, Nupur Garg, and Preeti Rati Gupta. Suhasini is a successful founder of a D2C brand which is being acquired by ITC for Rs 500 crore. Nupur Garg is the founder of Winpy, a non-profit focused on gender diversity in private equity. And Preeti Gupta is the founder of Lakshmi, a women-focused investment platform. From entrepreneurs to investment professionals, a growing number of affluent women are dedicating meaningful portions of their portfolio to stocks, tech startups, AMS bag, and a host of non-traditional asset classes. This shift is fueled by an increasing appetite and a focus on long-term wealth creation. In today's episode, we'll explore how wealthy women are investing. It's Wednesday, June 19. I'm your host, Apurva Mittal, and this is the Morning Brief.
So I was born in a middle-class family. My father was a working professional. My mother was a homemaker. So obviously there wasn't, kind of surplus money that was floating around. There was a lot of emphasis on using money prudently.
That is Nupur Garg, founder of Winpy, a non-profit focused on gender diversity in private equity. Nupur shared how her risk appetite has evolved over time and what asset classes she's betting on now.
So I had a comfortable childhood. But one of my most, I would say, interesting in the context of how society functions today, experience with money was when I used to sit down with my dad, and my dad was an avid investor in the stock markets. I used to help him keep his ledger. And that was the time when I started, we had physical certificates. We didn't have the DMAT shares. So that was really my first exposure to investments, so as to speak. Now, being a chartered accountant, obviously, I've been in the space of finance from day one. And I've held roles as the CFO, and then I've gone on to become an investor. So the relationship with money has become closer and closer over a period of time. And my first set of investments, and I think they were investments/savings. Obviously, I started off with a PPF, and I had some FDs and NSCs and some investments in mutual funds. But they were more with the orientation of trying to save my money. And because I was a finance professional, I didn't want to just leave it in a bank account and sort of just idle away.
Nupur, can you talk a little bit about your portfolio at present? How have you divided it?
So, it's similar to many other portfolios. There is obviously exposure to the stock market from a point of view of liquidity, not necessarily all short term and all sort of speculating and trading, but a little bit of also thinking about a longer term hold on companies that are potentially slightly undervalued today, which I have to say is very difficult to find, given how Sensex has been going up. Mutual funds are still a part of my portfolio. From a very long term appreciation point of view, I have a strong belief in the value of real estate. And that is when I think about saving for the really long term, another, say, 20 years or so. And I have a small child. So there is also this bit about what is it that we can keep in an investment which is really capital protected and which will maybe grow at maybe not an aggressive rate, but at a good rate. And then because I have been in private equity and venture capital, there is a very, very strong temptation for me to back startups. It's just that there are various conflicts with the professional roles I play. But I think just in terms of the risk appetite, today I'm happy to allocate a little portion, a little percentage of my portfolio to higher risk investments and maybe investments which are more illiquid and more longer term, like startups or private equity.
Nupur, what is your investment horizon when you're investing in equities? Are you looking at it super long term, medium term, or short term? What is it like for you?
When I was working with my dad, when I was a child, he used to quote a couple of stocks. And at that time, I think Reliance and ACC were the ones that he used to really like and say, these are long-term stocks. You can hold them and you can forget them and they will generate value for you. So I think a little bit of that is ingrained in my mind that really when you invest in stocks, you should look at value creation over a period of time. Unfortunately, I don't think the way the market behavior has been in the last, 5-10 years has given me the comfort that I want to hold for the next 5 or 10 years or do what my dad used to say. Hold it and forget it. Your money is safe. It will grow. For me, it is more about saying, can I take like a 6 to 12 month call on something?
Also, how have your preferences changed over the years? I think you sort of touched upon it already, but if you can just expand a bit that, in different stages of your life or as your income increased or your wealth increased, how did you start viewing investment differently? Was there a correlation there?
So in terms of how my risk appetite and the profile of the investments has changed over a period of time, as I grew and as I earned more and as I saved more, I think my ability to take a little bit more risk with my money has grown. I think a lot has changed since I had my son. As a couple, as a family, I think, we are now focusing also on making sure that we are able to allocate a portion of our wealth and our savings and investments for his future. For his education, etc.
Yeah.
So, it's about carving out a section and then creating a portfolio within a portfolio that will meet both capital protection and return requirements. And then, as we think of our own future, as you grow older, you start to think about your retirement. So, that is a calculation that one has to revisit. For us, we revisit that, I think, every 3 to 5 years and saying, given our current lifestyle and given our current expectations of the kind of life we would like to have once we are retired, what is the kind of money that we would need when we retire, and then how do we get there? And because, the market is changing, you need to constantly reevaluate that, and you want to constantly reallocate your portfolio. Another thing that has happened recently is, and I think it's also because those opportunities and options have become available, is the consideration to creating an investment portfolio which is in foreign currency. And that also comes with thinking about, whether, your child is going to study abroad and you need to save dollar money. And then, whether you are better off investing in dollars and just looking at whatever returns you get on dollars versus investing in, say, in the Indian rupee and also building in the currency depreciation and market risk, etc. So, this is how I guess my own investment philosophies have evolved over a period of time.
Can you give us a split of how you've allocated your money?
I would probably say it's roughly 25% in real estate. That's long-term capital appreciation and capital protection. There is probably 25% in equities, which is, looking at liquid and higher risk and higher returns. There's probably around 30-35% in more traditional, more conservative investments, whether it's through PPF or insurance, even through FDs, like absolutely conservative, because we have, you also have to think about the family's age and what our immediate cash cycles could require. And the balance is probably just spread across different things.
Nupur, so you must be meeting a lot of, affluent women as well. How do you think is like, what is the trend in terms of how they view money and how they are thinking about investment? Do you think it's very, very personal and it cannot be generalized at all? Or is there a theme that you're sensing among affluent women in India?
So honestly, I don't think it can be generalized because it is about what everybody wants to do with their money. I think it is also about the fact that most of the women I meet are from the investing industry and they're either founders or they're investors, and their comfort with various products, I think, could be much higher. So I think it also just comes down to seeing how comfortable are you with understanding the risk and reward of various products. But one trend that I have seen recently is, in terms of family offices, there are a lot more women who are at the helm of family offices today. So when I'm looking at, say, the private equity industry, a lot more family offices are entering the space to either invest in funds or invest in startups. And a lot of family offices today have daughters at the helm. So I think that speaks quite positively to both family offices, trusting or maybe diversifying their portfolios to something that is more illiquid and perceived as higher risk. But also the fact that the next generation of women is coming forward to really have confidence in allocating capital.
Nupur is right. Female ultra high net worth individuals, we'll call them UHNIs, are taking a more active role in creating and managing wealth. And wealth management firms are taking notice of this. They are now increasingly customizing products to suit UHNI women in India. Think art and rare gemstones. But at the end of the day, investment is a very personal decision. One is influenced by life situations, values one has grown up with, among other things. Our next guest, Suhasini Sampath, who's the co-founder of Yoga Bar, gives us a glimpse into her investment journey.
I think I started investing when I first started earning money, right? And for us as a family, I think the cardinal rule was we always saved money. We were big savers. And I think the first cardinal rule for making money is money that you save always compounds, and you always live within a certain means. And that's the discipline and habit to kind of inculcate, right? If you want to grow a corpus, it means you need to keep something, separate. So basically, when I was interning at KPMG, and because I was one of their very high performers, I used to get a large amount of bonus that would be equivalent to my entire year's stipend. And I would use that money to invest. So some of my earliest investment was actually my best investment, because while I was in KPMG, I obviously had a lot more time to kind of pick really good stock. And I had picked Tata Motors and Tata Elxsi back in the day. And that's given phenomenal return. I probably picked that when I was about anywhere between 24 to 25, I think 25 to, about that age is when I did active stock market investing. And that's probably been my best returns.
And when you were investing, what was your goal? Did you want to buy certain things or did you want to just accumulate savings? What were your initial goals and how have they changed, or they may have remained the same over the years?
I just like to do things well. If I'm investing, I want to be a really good investor and I want to follow. So curiosity drives me a lot more than the actual outcome. I want to do it well. Like if I'm spending time and effort on something, I want to make sure. So it's more a curiosity game, like how do large investors do it? So I would read stuff about how you would look at stocks and pure curiosity, right? It's not like to make money, but it's more like, how do you do this job of investing really well? How do you price risk? How do you price return? I think for most people, when you invest, if you price risk and return effectively, you will get the best kind of returns. And when I was much younger, my risk-taking ability was a lot higher. So if I wanted a multi-bagger, I need to make sure that I invest in a stock that has good management and that is a stock for the future. And that's what my goal was when I was younger. I wanted to see if I could pick a winning stock, more like a game, not with the sole objective of making money. But I also had the comfort that I was living in my mother's and father's house and my food and shelter would always be taken care of. Obviously, I just wanted to get really good at this act of investing. And that's what really motivated me.
So how do you invest now? Do you have external help? Do you have wealth managers, or you're still, or there are other asset classes that you've become interested in over the years?
Yeah, so it's a multi, like that answer I'll split into two or three things, right?
Okay.
So let's start with real estate. I do live in a rented house, but I use real estate because real estate investing allows me to save capital gains on the sale of my stock, a sale of
Yeah.
my shares, right? And people should only invest in real estate when that capital gains benefit is available. Otherwise, it's always a far more financially prudent decision to always rent a house. The only time you should actually buy a house is if you are getting a capital gain set off. Otherwise, real estate as an asset class, given the risk on title, given the multiple risk on, like the fact that it only returns about 8 or 9% net of all other costs of a real estate transaction, is not the best mode of investment. But if you set off the capital gains and you buy a house and then sell it in 3 years after benefiting from long term capital gains and then having an indexed cost of acquisition, the asset class can give you north of 15%, which is better than in the index. So it is very important to understand, again, the fundamental point of how to price risk and return. And for me, real estate is an interesting asset class because I do think there are opportunities in a city like Bangalore where sometimes you can get real estate where the cost of buying an apartment per square feet is less than the undivided share of land that you get. And, like if you have to price a downside risk on real estate, that if the apartment was ever fully broken down and your share of the land today is worth more than the share of the apartment that you bought, your downside risk is mitigated, right? And I feel like you can only make money on an investment when you look at an investment very differently from the way everyone else looks at it, and also find a different way to price the asset in your mind. So for me right now, real estate is important part of the total portfolio allocation. Yeah, and then I invest in the index because I think I'm a big believer that the economy is doing really well. I believe in the political system that we have today is quite stable. Investing in the index actually is a very good way to price risk and return. It's not too risky, and it also gives you, over a period of time, if you have a long term horizon, it will give you 12 to 15%, and which is a fairly good return. I have a very small allocation in a lot of startup investing, so I've done about 8 to 10. But again, I'm very clear that when you do startup investing, you have to enter the right price and exit when you have an opportunity to exit, or at any point when you're not exiting, you kind of price whether it is risky to continue to stay invested or not. And I think that's roughly the way I would look at my total investment portfolio.
So, initially you said your outcome was to be right and, really understand if the analysis you're making is correct. What kind of outcome are you looking for now when you're investing?
I think I would be very happy with a 12 to 15% return, and I don't want to have to really lose money. So I would say a non-risky portfolio that gives me 12 to 15% return would be a very, very good outcome for me.
Nifty 50 has soared from roughly 15,000 in 2021 to over 23,000 in June. A larger chunk of women are investing in equity-based plans for their long-term financial goals, according to Preeti Gupta, who's the founder of women-focused investment platform Lakshmi. This means that as women are increasingly becoming financially literate, they have a better understanding of risks in order to make informed financial decisions for themselves. I spoke to Preeti to unpack all of this.
So I think there are 2 or 3 things which have sort of brought about this shift. One is, I think, access to financial literacy as well as access to platforms. For example, payments has been a huge change maker in behavior. With the advent of digital payments, with the advent of things like UPI, it's brought about a huge shift in women just becoming very savvy with money and online transactions. And then, of course, I think overall, if you just look at the environment from just 2018 to where we are in 2022, it's not just the women, right? It's, the entire financialization index or the number of people who are investing have gone up. I think COVID is a huge change maker because it has brought home the fact to a lot of women that you cannot be financially dependent on just one person. You need to own your financial responsibility. And particularly, I have seen that shift in the high net worth individuals or high net worth women.
So, in terms of the investment behavior, does it shift with the net worth? And what are the preferred investment options for the both categories?
So, Lakshmi, for example, we are focused just on women and women investors and financializations of their savings, right?
Correct.
So, if we just cut across all segments, whether it's ultra HNI, mass affluent, mass middle class, there is just one behavior which is common to women across, and that is saving. I think women do believe in savings. Now, most of these savings are typically put into either bank accounts or they are put into fixed deposits or gold. And if it's ultra high net worth or high net worth women, it's even diamonds, right? They've never really looked at equity as an asset class or even the financial markets. It could be debt markets, it could be capital markets. They've never really looked at it for their personal investments. Now, what we've seen the shift in behavior is that women are now okay to understanding, can I, even if, for example, I want to invest in gold, is there a better way to invest in gold? Is a very important goal. And, when she starts putting aside money for a child's education, and instead of doing an FD for all of that money, if she understands that if I invest in equity markets, I actually can give my child a better education or have a larger corpus for their higher education. I think those are the shifts we've seen in women where it is not really related to returns. It's more related to saying, can I accomplish my financial goal better? Can I be smarter in doing these little things that I do on an everyday basis?
What kind of behavior are you seeing when it comes to investing in the stock markets?
If you look at the broad numbers, which is, today from a 98 crore AUM, maybe 4-5 years back, to today, women themselves holding 7.5 trillion worth of assets, right? But please remember, in all this data, it does not necessarily mean that the woman herself is taking charge. It could be my husband investing on my behalf. It will still show that I hold these assets. If you look at the equity AUM, it will show you that about 33% is held by women. I think to your question, I say this all the time, that women are risk aware. They are not risk averse. They are very happy investing into equities via direct equity or mutual funds, as long as they've understood what will happen to their money once they put into equities. Earlier, when I used to, 2019-20, when I used to speak to women, they would say, oh, my friend has lost so much money in equities. But today, they are willing to educate themselves. So we see more and more women, once they have higher financial literacy and as well as access, they are increasingly moving their asset base into equity. So even the proportion, if you look at the percentage of a woman's AUM across the board, especially HNI women, if it was, for example, 40% into equities versus 60% into, other products, that shift is happening today. Women have more than 50% invested into equities and lesser now into debt or other instruments.
Preeti, can you help us understand how is an average person on your platform dividing their portfolio? And if you want to categorize it by their net worth and age group, that will also help.
Absolutely. So I think I'll begin with age group first. I think 80% of our investments on the platform have come from women who are in the age group of 25 to 50. And again, 60% of this comes through SIPs, which is great behavior. If we sort of break up the entire AUM that Lakshmi enables or has enabled, about 65% is in equity, 30% in debt, and then we have 5 or 6% that goes into gold. Mind you, all the investments on Lakshmi platform come in through mutual funds. So this is great behavior. But when a woman first enters, I think we find that majority of them actually choose to put their money into a gold mutual fund or a sovereign gold bond, and then slowly sort of understand the power of equities and move the needle towards equities over a period of time. So I have to say this is not instant, but then we've also seen women actually go into high risk portfolios as well.
A couple of months ago, I reported how the growth rate of women investors opening their Demat account had actually slowed down after the COVID bump. Women who are not part of the high net worth category tend to possess an inherent apprehension towards engaging with anything that's risky. This is where experts say a greater need for financial literacy comes in. This could, after all, level the playing field across socioeconomic backgrounds. That's it from me today. I'm Apurva Mittal, and this episode was brought to you by sound designer Rajas Nayak and producer Vinay Joshi. Our executive producers are Anirban Chaudhary and Arijit Burman. Thank you for listening. And if you like this episode, do spread the word. All new episodes of The Morning Brief drop every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. It's on all major streaming platforms, including Amazon Prime, JioSaavn, Spotify, Apple, and Google Podcasts. And of course, ET's own audio platform, ET Play. Have a great week ahead.